trying to get out my notes situated, Michelle. You
Girl, you on
challenged me to really like, okay, let me really tap in and get this backstory and get out my notes together. Um,
listen. You do whatever you want to do, honey.
no, but it's actually a good thing though. It's like one of those things, where iron sharpens iron, right? It's a healthy
That's
thing. It's
true.
not like a bad thing. It's definitely healthy.
Yeah, um, I don't know if I should be saying this while we're live, but um, I've been toying back and forth with seminary, but
Hmm.
there are many factors that go into that. So I feel like this is like me creating my own little seminary space where
Uh-huh.
I learn and I, educate myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really why. And two, because you know me, I'll get off on a tangent and just keep going. So just trying to keep my brain focused on, you know,
Yeah.
one thing.
No, that's huge. That is huge. That is huge, and I support it. Um, you know,
Thank
when
you.
you finish, you have to get somebody else to partner with you because I'm gonna be like, yeah, sis, I don't have the knowledge. But
Girl.
that's the good part about Faith First, right? We're learning together.
Yeah.
It's a safe space. We're learning. And if you're wrong, shoot me something in my DMs,
Yeah.
and correct me. I'm cool with that.
Same. Same.
So yeah. But hey, everybody, we are back for a week. We don't know. We got to count up the weeks of
We
how long
do.
we've been doing virtual Bible study. But they have been so helpful for me. I've heard from a lot of different people. They've been helpful for a lot of people who've been watching with us, Michelle. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm excited about tonight. I initially text Michelle and said the topic would be now go, but I've been kind of toying back and forth like with what's bigger, your excuse or your God, right?
Ooh.
So if we was like old school in my church, the preacher has like a topic and a subtopic. So I think the topic would be what's bigger, your excuse or your God, and the subtopic would be now go.
Ooh, girl.
But I cannot wait to discuss this with you. Definitely want, if you wouldn't mind, just giving us like a replay of last week's study, and then we'll jump into this week.
Yes. So okay, so last week we talked about Peter and being fishers of men and Jesus. We talked a lot, right? But
Yeah, we did.
essentially, our theme for this month is sacrifice. And so we looked at um, how Jesus meets Peter and how Jesus recruits Peter, and ultimately what Peter had to sacrifice in order for he and his friends and his life to truly honestly be blessed. And so our topic for discussion was if you say so, Lord. And we talked a lot about um, trusting that God honors our obedience and our sacrifice. So knowing and realizing that, when we are called to make a sacrifice, especially particularly when we are called by God to make a sacrifice, He always honors that with rewards that we sometimes aren't even thinking about. And so it's just really encouraging. It was encouraging for me, and I think hopefully, it was encouraging for everybody that participated because it was just a really good way to just think about this season of our lives. I know a lot of us feel like we are sacrificing things in this time, in this shelter at home, in this place of uncertainty. And so, we just have to continue to trust and know that God has us and that He will ultimately fill our nets and overflow. So,
Yeah. Listen, last week, y'all, go back and watch it. I'm talking about blessed me. Michelle out here with a whole sermon, like just,
ah,
I mean, God was definitely present. Like
yeah,
he was definitely present. So, but definitely go back and check out last week's message or Bible study if you didn't get a chance to hear it. It was definitely worth replaying.
yeah,
Um, but this week we are looking at Moses, and in the realm of sacrifices, Moses had to sacrifice his excuses. And I honestly didn't even realize until I was reading how many there were. But this week we're studying from Exodus chapter 3. We're going to start at verse 9. I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of the backstory, and then we'll jump into verse 9, and we'll go from there. So Moses, for anyone who does not know, was a Hebrew. He was put in the river by his mother because at that time there was a decree to kill the Hebrew boys at birth. So his mom was like, nah, I'm going to get my baby out of here, right? So she puts him in the river, and he is found by Pharaoh's daughter. And Egyptians and Hebrews does not mix, right? So he's found by Pharaoh's daughter. He's nursed, and then she gets him, and she names him Moses, which means drawn out, pulled out of water. That's what Moses means. And then he lives this lavish lifestyle, unlike any of the other Israelites. And I mean, he's probably being fed fruit. He's getting the best education. But here's the conundrum, I feel, is Moses is too Egyptian to be Hebrew, right? To be a Hebrew, but still a Hebrew, so you can never really be an Egyptian, right? A tough spot to be in, a complicated life. And I think maybe that's something that a lot of us can identify with. Like, it's complicated. But Moses knew who he was, and so he witnessed an Egyptian beating an Israelite. And so he took it into his own hands and killed that Egyptian. So he had to flee because Pharaoh was coming after him. He fled into the wilderness, met some Midianites, married Jethro's daughter, became a shepherd. I mean, you go from living in like the lavish lifestyle to now you out here shepherding. And then this is where he has an encounter with God in a burning bush, right? And God is like, yeah, I see my people are suffering, and I want to take them to a place of milk and honey. Here's the catch. I want you to lead them, right? And so this is where we jump into in verse 9, and I'm going to try to read through it all the way through verses 9 through 14, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
All right. So Exodus 3, verse 9, I'm reading from the New Living Translation. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. Verse 11, but Moses protested to God, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? God answered, I will be with you, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. But Moses protested, if I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell them? God replies to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. All right. Open up my notes here. So Moses, I'll bet he like, who, me?
Yeah.
You want me to go? And just to add to more of the context at this point, Moses is 80 years old, right? So you would think like, I don't know if that's uplifting for us to know, or I don't know, like you don't at 80, you like, who am I? Not enough belief within yourself that you can do something. But I think again, in relation to us, a lot of us, we feel that way, right? No matter what age you're in, when God calls us to do something, we go, who, me? I'm not able. I don't have the ability to lead. That's what he says. You want me to lead the people?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I thought was great, and it's over in chapter 4, verse 1. God does not even address the excuses.
Yeah.
Right? He equips Moses, right? So sacrificing his excuses, Moses had to get rid of his excuses. We'll hit the rest of them, but I definitely want to hear from you, Michelle. Like, just what are your thoughts, like coming into the story?
Yeah. So this is another week of stepping on my toes. That's why I sent you those emojis when you like, I was like, oh Lord. Man, I think that there's a recurring theme, right, from last week, because we talked a little bit about ego. And I think that sometimes our egos are inflated, and other times they are deflated. And I think in this instance, Moses's ego was deflated, right? He he knew that even though he was living in the palace, he didn't come from royalty, right? So I'm sure in the back of his mind, he felt a sense of maybe inadequacy, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's going from the palace to the pen, so to speak, shepherding. And it's like, so you want me to do what now? It's like, say what now? Say what?
Excuse me,
And
come again?
right. And so when you think about what it means to really sacrifice um our ego, it means that we trust, right? That God knows us best. And so
Yeah.
I think that sometimes what we do is we take um our own sense of self and we put that above what God says we are. But God
Right.
always says that we are more than a conqueror, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, like if anybody gonna affirm you, it's gonna be God, and it's
Come
gonna
on
be
now.
via the word. And so I
Yeah.
think that we have to really sacrifice our feelings about ourselves in order to accept what and who God has called us to be. And sometimes those things are not equal, and sometimes those things are not balanced, you know. And I think in this instance, Moses had to get to a point where, well, and God showed him clearly that
Yeah.
I'm not taking no for an answer. So you can keep throwing these, you know, excuses at me, this deflated ego at me. You, just because you don't believe in you, that doesn't mean I don't believe in you. And that's
Yeah.
powerful. It's powerful.
It is. And I think the fact, going back to what I said earlier, is that he never acknowledged. We're not talking about what you feel like you're lacking. Who am I?
Right.
I am.
Right.
And I think we have to learn to get to a place where it's not, well, like you said, this is what I think about me. What does God say about you?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of times we put a lot of volume behind what we say, what other people say about us. But the loudest volume is that is within your head, right? That says, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't know enough. In
Yep.
Moses' case, he says, I'm not even a good speaker. Like,
Right.
what are you talking about? Which is weird, Michelle, because just in my little bit of research I've done, Moses wasn't a terrible speaker. Now he says like he had a stammer, a stutter, but overall he could
Yeah.
speak. But that is a lot like us, right? We get in a position and we diminish who
Yes.
we are. Like God is, and it's like I'm reading this book called The Big Leap. You should definitely check it out, Michelle. A really good read. And it talks about how we diminish the gifts that, or we deflect on
Girl.
the gifts that God has given us, right? So, for example, someone gives you a compliment and says, Michelle, you do this really well. Oh, no.
Well,
And it's almost like a slap in the face of God has given you this gift, this ability. Don't downplay it,
yeah.
right? And we oftentimes, I'm guilty of diminishing the gift that God has given us, the abilities that God has given us, even when they're not at their strongest.
Mm-hmm.
It's trusting and knowing that if God has called me to do something, He's going to equip me. I may not be equipped when He called me, but I promise you, when it gets to it,
Yes.
you will be equipped.
Yeah.
Moses spent 40 years in that wilderness before that burning bush moment, right? That was God prepping him then,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of times when we are going through, I guess, those trials, those down times, those seasons, we don't see those as that is a time where God is building us. And so instead, when God brings us to a place to use us, instead of us sacrificing that excuse of saying, okay, I know I feel limited here, look at all that God has brought you through to get to this point.
Yeah.
All that God allowed Moses to get. Because, like Moses, the wilderness, he didn't know nothing about that lifestyle, Michelle.
Yeah.
But God allowed him to go through that so he can get to a place where he would be able, he would be equipped to lead the people. And it wasn't even about his own abilities. It was the fact that God had called him to do it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the other biggest thing, right? It ain't even about you. It's the fact that he has called you to do
Yeah.
it. So he's gonna make sure that it works out. It's about putting our faith. We always go back, right? Faith first, putting our faith in
Girl.
God and not in ourselves. We want to put. We really, I gotta believe in me. You should believe more so in God. And if God is in you, there is nothing.
Nothing.
There is nothing that you cannot do. There is nothing that He's called us to that we cannot do.
Child. We could end it right here, honestly. Because
No, no.
like,
I definitely want to hear more from you.
I feel like my whole body hurts because it's just like this whole week, this study has just like hit me like a Mack truck. So many things are going through my head because I mean, like I'm in a season of what I call fun employment, and I've been looking for jobs, and recruiters have been reaching out to me about everything, literally like director positions, lead positions, all these positions, right? And none of them have fit yet. So I've been kind of like mugging God, like, yo, man, like what is it? You said go. So now that I'm going, where's the equipment? Like, where's the equipment, sir? So it's funny that you would bring up you said something, and I'm trying to think about it. So many things are going through my head. One of them I know, though, when you were talking about sacrificing his excuses, it made me think about what probably made Moses apprehensive from the get-go, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, we don't know him personally, so we can't ask him. Right. But I would dare to say that it was likely a fear of failure. And I think often about how much we sacrifice by holding on to our fear of failure, mm-hmm. and not letting go of it so that we can move into a place of faith. And I think that a fear of failure comes from comfort. When you're comfortable, when you feel like you're in a safe space, think about it. Like you get into a place where you know what to expect. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, this is a breeze. I know what I'm doing. And then as soon as you get like super comfortable, God's like, just kidding, I want to move you over here. And then we're like holding on for dear life to something. We talked about this, I think maybe a few months back, about how we hold on for dear life to old lifestyles and to old things. And God is like, no, I'm moving you over here. And so I think that one of the reasons Moses brought up all these things is because he was trying to talk God out of using him. Yeah. Because he felt like he was inadequate. And again, I think that inadequacy comes from a fear of failure. We feel like our flesh tells us, right? Our flesh tells us you can't do that. But our spirit, God is trying to say, I know you can't do it, but with me, you can do anything. That's why the word tells us with man, it's impossible. But with the Lord, anything is possible. That's what that means. Yeah. You by yourself, Tori, can't do some of the things that God is calling you to, but with him, meaning you lock arms with him, you listen in, you plug in, you can do anything, really and truly. And it requires you to almost kind of turn off the rational part of your brain, because faith isn't rational, it's irrational. Faith is not something that can be, proven by theory and hypotheses and all these things. It's something you just have to trust. It is literally the definition, right? Yeah. And so Moses, in his questions back to God, I know that it had to be in the pit of his stomach. He felt like, I'm not good enough. And that's something that I think all of us maybe at one point in time in our lives have felt. And we really have to, that's the time when you have to tap in. You have to really tap into the word, and you have to tap into those affirming lessons and those affirming scriptures that tell you, like I said, you are more than a conqueror. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. When you start hearing that and you start trusting and knowing that, it flips everything for you.
It does. It does. And in fact, what you're saying about us being content where we are, Moses was content with being in the wilderness with his family. I'm good. Like, I made it out. They didn't catch me. I'm straight. Yeah. Right. But like you said, God, he doesn't allow us to settle, right? Because that would have been settling compared to what Moses went on to do. Yeah. And God doesn't want us to settle. He doesn't want us to just get so comfortable where we at. But I tell you this much, he will stir the nest, right? Like a bird. Like, okay, you comfortable? All right, I'm gonna make you real uncomfortable. And what's the best thing to do before it gets to that place It's to
It's to
just
go.
go. Just go ahead and go. Because now you're going to, it's almost like when they were on the boat and the boat was being tossed and turned, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, what's going on?
Yes.
Jonah, it's your fault, right? And because of our disobedience,
Yeah.
we rock the boat in the lives of others who have nothing to do with our disobedience,
Mhm.
right? And so content is sacrificing requires you to give up being content,
Yeah.
complacent. It requires you to give that up. And it's tough because especially when we're at a place where we feel like we're excelling where we are, right? We
Mhm.
feel like I'm in a good place, my job is good, I'm making the
Yes,
money I want to make, right? I mean, it's easy to move when we're not happy, but
girl.
when you are genuinely satisfied with where you are, and God is like, no, I got something else I want you to do. And you start going, well, you know what? I got all these reasons why I can't do it. And what meant the most to me, Michelle, is we know how great of a leader Moses went on to be. This man was scared just like you and me.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, you have to find somebody else. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And then God tells him, well, who made your mouth? Right? We forget who is the creator. We forget that he is the Alpha and the Omega, that he is everything in between. And that if he's called us to do something, he he gave you that mouth. He
Yeah.
is going to word your mouth. And then you
Yeah.
know what he did for Moses? All right, well, since you're going to say you can't speak, I'm going to provide you with someone that can speak for you. So
Mhm.
what's your excuse now?
Yeah.
Right? He will remove every time we put up a roadblock, gotta come like, no, that ain't the issue. That
Yeah.
ain't the issue. And it's really just about recentering our focus off of ourselves and putting our focus back on God.
Mhm.
Because when we start to make excuses or to doubt why things can't be done or why we can't do stuff, it's because we are looking at ourselves. And like you said, we don't have the ability to do nothing.
Right.
Nothing. You are right. You cannot do it. You are absolutely right. But with God, nothing is
Whew.
impossible. Nothing is impossible, Michelle. I'm saying it for me.
No,
Nothing
nothing.
is impossible. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do it by yourself.
Right. That's it. That's
You
it.
said we try to rationalize it. It's not supposed to make sense.
No.
All this is crazy. We wasn't
Right.
supposed to be doing virtual Bible study. What is
Right.
this? We're supposed to
Girl.
be doing prayer on Friday. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Oh,
How are we gonna get on? You know, when we first started doing virtual Bible study, for those who don't know, we had no idea how we were gonna be able to get on together.
brother,
Because
man.
Facebook had removed the ability to go live, with two people. So we were like, well, how are we gonna get this done? And God will equip you, right? So he's sitting the kid with the message like, hey, this is how you do that. Well,
Yeah.
who gonna listen? People have been tuning in thankfully
Yes.
to God, right? They've been touched. And I think more than those people who have been touched, it has changed my life,
Mine too.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's not about you. We have to get our eyes off of ourselves and put our eyes on the God who lives in us. It never mattered what Moses could or could not do. It doesn't matter what you can and cannot do. It does not matter. And once we shift our mindset from thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to get this done because, okay, I know this person or I got, I need to get this amount of money. It does not matter.
Yeah.
When God calls you to do something, he will make it work. And I thought that was just so dope, Michelle, when he was like, who created your mouth?
Right.
I did. What are you like? We go to God like he ain't made us, Michelle. And it's like, oh my God, how am I gonna get this done?
And he
How?
like, just chill.
And it's just like, how like who are you talking to? I am who I am God.
Tori, all right.
There is nothing. I'm just saying, Michelle, like there is nothing that God cannot do. And
Nothing.
if we truly believe that he lives in us, then there is nothing that you cannot do.
Yeah.
Nothing.
See, I don't know. You was talking about me last week, but this, I mean, seriously, it feels like I'm getting hit by a Mack truck because it's just so much, so timely for me. You were talking about, how God goes back to Moses when he was like, well, I can't speak all that great, right?
Right.
It's funny how we find the smallest things to make it almost okay for us to not go after something that's bigger than us.
Oh, that's it.
And it's like, uh, who better than you? One, because you were a part of that kingdom. You knew what they did from the inside out.
Yeah.
They're already familiar with you. So why wouldn't you return and free the people that you said you were avenging in the first place, right? Because
Yeah.
the whole murder happens because he feels like his people were being mistreated.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then go free them. And that's
Yeah.
really what God is saying. I think so often we forget, like you said, that it's bigger than us. So whatever I'm called to do is bigger than just Mache. It's bigger than just Mache uh, building a brand or a platform or whatever. This is about helping the people and God using me as an instrument, right?
Yeah.
It talks about how, when God speaks to Moses through the burning bush and is talking to him, one of the things I've always wondered is, why would God send Moses when God had already come down to earth? Why couldn't he just go free the people,
Yeah.
But it talks about how in this moment, God was sending Moses and using Moses as a prophet to go and tell Pharaoh, like, hey, this is what you need to do. And that's a huge assignment. And I think that sometimes we get caught up on what we're lacking. And God really, if we were lacking so much, guess what? He wouldn't have picked us. He wouldn't have picked us in the first place. If we weren't qualified, if we couldn't do it, he would not picked us. He wouldn't have picked us. And so I think we need to remember that as we try to talk ourselves out of dreams, out of jobs, out of opportunities, out of callings. God would not have put it on your heart if it were not for you to do. Period. So if
Yeah.
you've been pushing it off to the side, pushing it off to the corner, just know it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to continue to come back up until you fulfill that assignment.
Yeah. One of the last things that Moses said is basically, I don't want to go. Send somebody else. And I was like, Moses, this is me.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. Send somebody else. Lord, I don't want to do it. Right. But you said this when we first started. We also sacrifice and leave so much on the table, right? When we don't go, when we don't move when God has called us to move, when we don't act on those dreams that He's placed within us, and we leave so much, and so we worry about sacrificing on this end, and we don't even realize maybe until decades, years later, or we may never, how much you truly left on the table. I know you don't want to do it. I feel you. But God has called you at this season, at this time, right? Because Moses' life went through phases. There was a season where he was almost like an Egyptian prince, right?
Yeah.
There was a season where he served in the wilderness as a shepherd boy. And then there was a season where he had to lead the people. In this season, whatever God is calling you to do, depend totally on Him. That takes the pressure off of you. Once you say, I don't know, but God is going to do it, there is no pressure on me, Michelle. All the pressure is on God. And I think, like you going back to what you said, we have a fear of failing. We don't want to be embarrassed, right? We fear that. We fear that. But going back to last week's message, it is out in the deep is where God wants to give us abundance and bless us.
Yeah.
It is when He calls us to do things that we don't feel qualified to do, is where He shows up and He makes you, the greatest leader, one of the greatest leaders ever, right? It is when you don't feel like you can do it, when you say, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
That's the time, right? To really like it and be like, all right, God, you must really want me to do this, because otherwise the enemy wouldn't fight you so hard with it.
Right.
Because here's the thing, you may not see your future. But the devil, the enemy, he knows.
He like
if I can just block her, I could just block him right there, and literally detour your destiny, right? Yeah. Because you aren't willing to sacrifice your excuses. You aren't willing to totally depend on God. You sacrifice and you leave so much on the table. And when our life is over, no, it was like, well, she could have been, he could have been this. No, I want to be all those things. I said on was it yesterday or Monday? When I die, Michelle, I want to die empty.
Same.
I want to have done all that God has said that I
Yes.
could do. I don't want to leave anything on the table. I don't want to be, however, whatever age and going like, man, I wish I would have done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have. I wish, that's like one of the number one things they say if you go and you talk to people who are dying, right? They talk about their regrets,
Yeah.
what they wish they could have done. So for those of us who are yet in our right minds, who our health is still fairly good, we have the ability to go and accomplish those dreams, those goals, whatever God has placed on our hearts. Here's your sign. Like God
Yeah.
send me a sign. Here's your sign. Go. Don't worry about where the money's gonna come from. Don't
Yeah.
worry about who's gonna support you. Don't worry about how it's gonna get done. Just know that if God has called you to do it, and you may not even see the results or the fruit of it in that moment, right? Because we talked about that too, that instant gratification. We microwave generation. We like that real quick, real fast. Netflix loading up real slow. What is the problem? And God is not always instant. He can be, but he is not always instant. And we don't always get that gratification in that moment. We don't always get the applause right then. But when you're doing what God has called you to do,
Yeah.
he will make it work.
Yeah. I mean, you could even talk about it from the aspect of like an artist. When an artist is painting, typically, or you commission an artist to paint a portrait for you, you're not going to see the picture instantly, right?
Right.
It happens piece by piece. And I think that we have to know and understand that God is not going to show us the full picture before we go. He's like, I'm drawing the picture. You just go. Each step I draw, you go. So you have to start somewhere, right? And it can't be that you see the full picture and agree or sign off on it before you go. That's not how it works. It's literally one step at a time. And I think that we forget really what faith is, right? And it is the evidence of things unseen. You haven't seen it all, but you still have to trust and know that God has and that he knows. I talk about Jeremiah 29:11 all the time. I know the plans I have for you. That's God talking, not you. He didn't say you had the plan. He said he had the plan, and he knows the plan. So as long as he knows the plan, you don't necessarily need all the details. You just have to be willing to go, and you need to be obedient. And I feel like as we are discussing sacrifice, you mentioned it a little bit, right? There's the sacrifice on one end where I'm sacrificing my comfort, my contentment, my convenience, maybe, to do this greater thing. But if I refuse to sacrifice my contentment or my convenience, what am I still sacrificing? Because either way, there's going to be a sacrifice. And it could be that I'm sacrificing being the best person I can be. I'm sacrificing the destiny of my children. I'm sacrificing the legacy of future generations. Like there's so many things when you start to unpack it where we sit and we refuse to do anything and we're sacrificing so much more. So honestly, like you said, Tori, I don't want to leave this world full of the things that God has called me for or to. I want to leave empty. And I might not even, who's to say that I'll finish those things, right? I just want to know that I've given my best towards doing the things that God has called me to do so that when I leave this earth, I don't have anybody speaking over me at my funeral or whatever, and you got to make stuff up about what I did. No, I did all the things that God called me to do. You know what I mean? I just, life is much too short. Life is much too stressful even for us to not give our best selves to what God has called us to do. It's just too short.
It is. when you were talking, there's a lot of different things that was coming to mind. I think I also said is God is not going to ask you why, Michelle, why were you not Moses?
Right.
He didn't create you to do what Moses came to do, right? And so I think also one of our thieves is comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to look at how someone else is living their life and, well, I can't eat. But he didn't call you
Right.
to be Shay. He didn't call you to be Tori. He didn't call you to be anybody other than yourself. And again, what he's called you to do, he will equip you
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
It's all about trust. Like you said, a lot of times we forget about faith. Last week we talked about God is predictable yet unpredictable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said with the picture. Well, we know in the end that he's gonna come through.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with it. And I think part of that is we like control. I know I do.
I do too, girl.
You know, it's like, okay, so this is gonna go like this, and then
Yep.
we're gonna turn the page, it's gonna be just like that. Yeah, and God does not work like that, because then that does not require faith.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew exactly how every step was gonna go,
Yeah.
why then would you need to have faith?
Yeah.
Right? When this thing falls through because it looks real bad, that's when your faith steps in, like, okay, God, I know this looks awful, but I know what you told me. And you
Yeah.
have to trust him and put it back in his hands.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of times we get stuff and we take it, kind of like Moses, like, I'm just take this in my own hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going, and then it doesn't work out, and then we have to go on the run.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I ain't talking about Beyonce and Jay-Z too. Like, we have to go on the run because we have to take it, we have to put it back in God's hands. It's not in your control. Be okay with that. Trust and know, like you said, that God has a plan for your life.
Yeah.
And it may not look like what your mama said. It may not look like what your auntie and them said. It probably looks nothing like what you dreamed of when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But trust that God is going to come through. He is not a God that lies. He holds his end of the deal.
Yeah.
And I know we mentioned this before. A lot of times, because of our experiences, right, we lack trust and the ability to believe in something other than ourselves, right? We take that to God as well. But God is not like your father who didn't stick around.
Right.
God is not like that friend who hurt you.
Yeah.
God is not like man. He's not like people. So when he calls us, it's not a setup to watch you fail. It's a setup so that it can not only bless you, but so they can bless the people that are connected to you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, and I say this because I think sometimes we forget, we are here to glorify God. That's what we are here for. And so when we are able to take his calling and work towards it, to do what he has called us to do, he gets glory from that. And it's not about, trying to make you suffer or trying to see how much you can take, but it's more so about showing those around you that with him, all things are possible. So, yes, you may have been out of work for a long time, but when that job comes in, everybody else is going to see how he kept you in the season when you were lacking, right? When you build that business from the ground up, not having a degree, not having all the resources, not having a silver spoon in your mouth, people are going to see that, and God is going to get the glory because you had him there every step of the way. That is what this is about. Moses felt like he was inadequate, and he felt like, as long as I give God these excuses, he's not going to call me. What he didn't realize is that God called him because he is who he wanted. Moses is who God wanted. He could have called anybody else, but he called Moses, the man who lived in the palace, who happened to be a Hebrew. Where do they do that at, right? Just thinking about the whole setup, and I'm so glad that you gave the background. People forget about that part of the story. And so it's important that we continue to talk about and think about the story in full, because that's so important. Can you hear me?
All right, we're back.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just like, Who knew? Who knew when Moses' mom put him in that river that he would end up being pulled out of it by an Egyptian woman and by the Pharaoh's daughter at that? Like, it's just a setup. And I
Yeah.
think we miss the setups in our own lives. We see things as the things that we see as inadequacies, God sees as setups. He sees them
Yeah.
as setups, right?
Yeah.
Because Moses wouldn't have been able to set his people free if he was still in the palace. They probably would have killed him, actually.
Preach.
But he's going back there now with an understanding that he has God on his side and having lived a life outside of the palace to see what was actually going on. That was a setup. So the things that you feel like make you unqualified, make you uncalled, uh, things that you feel like put you at the bottom of the list, God is like, no, actually, that's why I want you. That's why
Yeah.
I'm calling you, because you have that experience. We got to stop disqualifying ourselves before God does. Like, it sounds cliche, but he qualifies the called. He ain't
Yeah.
calling the people with PhDs all the time. He calling the people with no degrees. You know,
Yeah.
he's not worried about humanity or society standards. He worried about whether you gonna go or not.
Yeah. And the more complex and complicated the
Girl,
background, the better. The
it
messier,
is that way.
the better. And you were saying something earlier, made me thought about. In this case with Moses, God was determined that it would be Moses to accomplish this.
Yeah.
But I believe that there are times where when we don't do it,
Oh, girl.
He will call someone else,
Yeah.
right, to
Yeah.
do it, because He's not going to allow His people to remain in bondage. He's not going to allow this person to go lacking forever. So if
Mm-hmm.
you don't move your feet, I think there are times when He pushes us and He forces us.
Yeah.
But then there are times where He says, okay, and then He calls someone else.
Yeah.
And then we looking like, I had that idea.
Yeah.
That could have been me. It
Yeah.
could have been you. It
Yeah.
should have been you. But who is hindering you?
Mm-hmm.
It is usually ourselves. Like you said, we disqualify ourselves. We talk down on ourselves. We allow what other people are saying to get into our spirit. Well, she right. I was like this. It does not matter what man says,
Yeah.
because they don't control anything anyway.
Thank you.
It is ultimately God who is in control.
Yes.
So I much rather take my chances with God and fail
Yeah.
than to go off what man says and get what we would see as the worldly successfulness, right? I
Mm-hmm.
would much rather take my chances betting on God.
Yeah.
Much rather.
Yeah.
Because here, like He told Moses, like, I'm going to take my people into a land flowing with milk and honey. So we already know that He has a plan for our lives, and He plans to help us and not harm us, right?
Yes.
We got that. We got the end. You just gotta trust Him to
That
get through that in between. And it's not a wake up and, oh yeah, I just know everything gonna be all right. It's every day, step by step. I get up today and,
Yes.
Lord, I trust you. I can't see Friday, but today I trust you. And Wednesday, I know you're gonna give me enough grace to get through today.
Yeah.
I know you have given me enough favor to get through today. When Friday get here, Friday will handle itself.
Yes.
And really just getting out of ourselves, out of our own system, right? Because we've been talking about this quite often. God breaks the system. He doesn't, like you said, He doesn't care anything about your degree
Right.
or your lack thereof. He doesn't care about your past.
Yeah.
It does not matter to Him.
Mm-mm.
It does not matter. And so when we look at ourselves and we come up with all these reasons as to why we can't go, why we can't do it, the question I want to ask is, what's bigger? Is
Yeah.
your excuses bigger than your God?
Girl. Woo.
What is bigger? Your excuses or your God?
Mm.
And I know in the moment, like right now, it sounds good, right? But you have to wake up every day and say, God, I'm choosing you
Yeah.
over what I feel I lack. I'm choosing you over what I don't have, what I don't see. I'm going to choose you every day.
Yeah.
And when you make that decision, like I said, it's a daily thing, not a I trust you for the whole 365, because
No.
we talk about this, Michelle. There are ups and downs in this thing.
Girl,
Some days
it's a
I'm like,
roller coaster, honey.
I don't know, Jesus. I know what you said, but because but then going back to what we always say, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to speak life into you when you're having those down moments.
Yes.
Surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you when you feel like I can't make it. I don't see the bigger vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? And distance yourself from the people who you say, well, God has called me to do this, and they, I don't see that.
Right.
Them ain't the people you need in your corner. Those aren't the people you need speaking into your life. Surround yourself with people who are going to support the dreams, the gifts, the ideas, whatever it is that God has given you.
Yeah.
Or you sacrifice everything that He had planned for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that sacrifice, I think, is too heavy,
Yeah.
Michelle. It is too burdensome to wake up one day in a nursing home, or you're in
Oh,
your bed and you're dying and you're like, God, I could have been so many things. I could have done so many things.
yeah.
But I was afraid. I thought I didn't have the ability.
Mm-hmm.
I thought people was going to look at me funny and question me. Like Moses said, well, what am I going to say when they ask me? Because they're not going to believe that you sent me. I don't want to wake up and have those regrets.
Mm.
And I hope that anybody who sees this now or later, that you tell yourself that I'm going to sacrifice my excuses.
Yeah.
Because what God has for me is so much greater than my fears. Because
Yeah.
essentially that's what it is. We're scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so trust God more than you fear failure. Trust God more than you fear the opinions of people. Trust God more than your own thoughts in your head at times,
Yeah.
right? You have to trust Him.
Yeah. Cool. So much. The first thing that I wanted to say is we were talking about, how God, one thing I know God to be is He's a gap filler. So if we're here and He's calling us up here, He'll fill in that gap, right? And I
Yeah.
think about the scripture that tells us that, that God will supply all of our needs according to His riches and glory. And we know He got all the riches and all the glory.
Yeah.
So if He'll supply all of our needs, what that means is when we need Him, He will step in. So if I start something and I don't feel like I can finish it, guess who's coming to the rescue? God.
Yeah.
So why is it that we harbor so much on not having it all together or not having it all? You know what I mean? It's like, well, I want to do this, but I don't have all the money. Or I want to do this, but I don't have the resources. Or I don't have, and it's like you start thinking in that pile of excuses. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I know we've been talking a little bit about, feeling like, oh, we're not good enough or oh, we're inadequate. But I'm stepping on my own toes with this one. I think another one of our excuses is like, God, I don't have the time for that. You know, I
Yeah.
don't you want me to do that, but that requires me to wake up at 5 a.m. or that requires me to stay up late or it requires me to do some extra work. I don't have time for that. And that is another thing that keeps us from really truly doing what God has called us to do, especially in this world of busyness. And I say, if there's one thing that we suffer from, we suffer from busyness. It's like busy just for the sake of being busy, not really being effective or efficient. We just busy. Oh, I got this meeting or I got this call, and it's like, do you have to be on that call? Do you have to spend 2 hours on Facebook? Do you have to spend 3 hours, watching that Netflix, whatever? And again, stepping on my own toes, we really have to check ourselves and check our excuses, because if we really want to be all that God has called us to be, we are going to have to sacrifice something. And like we said, Tori, I would much rather sacrifice a little bit right now to do what God has called me to do than to not do it and sacrifice so much more.
Yeah. You said stepping on toes, girl. You slapped me in the face. 'Cause
So
that is usually like, you know what, I don't have time. But you know, we find time for everything else that we want to do.
yeah, we do.
Uh, Going back to that book I mentioned, Big Leap, the author, he talks about he was like a life coach, and he
Okay.
talked about telling this guy said, I don't have time, I don't have time. He said, well, just carve out 1 hour in your day, you know, to work on that what you really are passionate about, right?
Mm,
Finding the time, right? And I think I've learned to do this, to be intentional, right? Even about my time with God. So I can't just go on a whim and be like, I'm gonna pray sometime today. Like I try to set my prayer time in the morning when I first wake up.
yeah.
I'm reading my Bible at this time because that helps me stay on track by
Hmm.
being intentional. And there are times where I may pray off times but if I know that I set this time to be intentional about
Yeah.
what I need to do, I know it's going to
Yeah.
get done. I might get some extra, but this is definitely not going to go lacking. And so the same thing, like you said, about our busyness, and just when God has given us dreams and ideas and whatever He's called you to do, you know, whatever it is, whether it be in ministry or whether it be something in the business world, right? Is to be intentional about carving out that time. So that cannot be your excuse that I don't have time. Make time,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes we talk as though we don't have control over our day. I ain't got time, huh? Like you, to some degree, you set your own schedule, right? To some degree,
Especially
um,
now.
yeah, for a lot of people now. And
Yeah.
so, what I discovered when we first went into quarantine is, yeah, I was just busy for busy sake, not being effective, not being efficient, and that's what God wants us to be. He wants us to be effective. He wants us to be efficient.
Yeah, he does. He
Like,
does.
how are we going to set an example for anybody in the world, right? When we're not effective, when we're not efficient, because we know that's what the world thrives by.
Oh yeah.
So, we as the body of Christ, we have to learn how to be effective, be efficient, be intentional about our time, sacrificing, getting up early, right? Maybe staying up late if
Oh,
necessary. It's probably the getting up early for me. I can stay up late. It's the getting up early.
me too.
Whatever it is, but like you said, Michelle, knowing that in this life we are going to have to sacrifice something.
Yeah.
And you can say, no, I'm not. Then you also sacrifice all the blessings, all the good things that God has waiting on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of sort of off topic, but not really, since we're talking about sacrifice. You know, we've been seeing a lot of ads and commercials and, you know, shout outs to frontline workers, essential workers. And I definitely want to shout out them. We've definitely been praying if there are any essential workers or frontline workers who are here. But I just think about, you know, the people that I know who are closest to me, who are on the front lines, who are working in this COVID crisis. One thing that I know about them is they went into this expecting that there would be hard days, knowing that if I choose this profession or I choose this career, it's eventually going to be hard. I don't know if anybody predicted or expected it to be this hard, but one thing I wanted to acknowledge is that so many of these essential workers and frontline workers have said, you know, I don't need the praise, right? I don't need a commercial on television. I don't need an airplane exhibition or demonstration. What I need is for people to be safe. What I need is for people to listen to the CDC, you know, to wear a mask, to wash their hands, to stay at home. And we start thinking about what sacrifice means. And if there was ever a time to sacrifice, it would be in this season, right? I'm not here to say what the best path forward is for this country, because right now we've been all over the place, right? But what I will say is that so many people are sacrificing daily, whether you see them or not, they are sacrificing, and they are not looking for the praise, but yet they are working to help those around them. And in some ways, I think that this is what Moses had to tap into. God was trying to get Moses to tap into this because Moses's obedience, the freedom of his people hinged on Moses's obedience. The health of so many people around us hinges on our personal sacrifice. And as Americans, we're always talking about rights and well, it's my right to do this and I should have the right to do that. But as believers, we should be the ones standing up, stepping up, saying, you know what? I'll sacrifice that extra trip to TJ Maxx. I'll sacrifice, that extra trip to the beach or that vacation wherever, if it means that the people around me will be safe. I'll sacrifice 2 hours today to go feed frontline workers because I know that they're working overtime. It's like, when are we going to stop worrying about and being so focused on our rights that we realize that this life as a Christian is about sacrifice? It is. It's about sacrificing something. And I think that we really need to check ourselves in this new normal, right? When we talk about, oh, well, this person over there is doing that and that person's doing their thing. I'm going to just do my thing. God is still calling us to do the right thing. So it's not about you doing your thing. It's about you doing the right thing. And I think that I don't know where that came from, but it just made me think about how I see so many people talking about stuff. And I'm like, I would rather sacrifice a small portion of my day or my summer, to make sure that the greater good of my community and the people around me is amplified. And I don't know. Sometimes I don't think we talk enough about sacrifice in that way, even those daily sacrifices. But again, Moses, his obedience is what freed, his people. So what's yours? What's yours?
I felt like that was a PSA for Christians. Like, do your part.
Yeah.
Right? Part of sacrifice. Jesus giving his life. Our lives are supposed to be selfless, right? Thinking about yourself less.
Yeah.
Putting others, thinking highly, putting others before you, right? And like you said, we lack that oftentimes as Americans. And I say that because we have people from other countries that watch, right? But I know as Americans, we often lack that. That's that, privilege.
Yeah.
That we walk in every day. But we have, like you said, we have to, as Christians, think more about sacrifice on the day-to-day terms, right? Because we said this when we first started talking about it. People often hear sacrifice and they think big, grandeur things.
Yeah.
And it's the small things like keeping your butt at home when you ain't got to be out, wearing a mask when you're going to be around people because you may be okay, but grandma may not be.
Yeah.
Right? Or whoever who has those underlying diseases, they may not be. And I say this for me, being someone who at this point, knowing more than 5, probably at this point, maybe more than 10 people who have died, from COVID, and knowing nurses and doctors and those people who work in the stores, right? And just seeing like it's tough. And so thinking more of others than ourselves, making that sacrifice. Like I really want to go on a vacation, Michelle. I really want to go.
Same.
I want to be on somebody's beach.
Yeah.
But but I also want us collectively to get through this and get past it.
Yeah.
And my beach trip is not more important than the life of someone else. I don't care how much I feel like I deserve it, right? It's not more important than that. And so I think that's a great point that you brought up. And what we needed to hear, like I said, was like a PSA for Christians. It need to be on a commercial. Because like we are like collectively taking a L in that category.
L's all over the place. All over.
And it is unfortunate. But I guess what I would say is like my way of wrapping up this is, Moses had several excuses as to why he could not do what God has called him to do. But none of them were enough to deter God from calling him anyway. Whether those things were true or not,
right?
I still want you, right? Whether those things you say about yourself are true or not, God still wants you. And I think we have to get past the idea that God wouldn't want us because you are exactly who he wants. You are exactly who he wants to do his will, to bring others to Christ. to do great things in this earth in his name. It is you who he wants. The person who feels like, I'm just not qualified. Like Moses, I can't talk. These folks ain't gonna believe me, right? He wants you. And I know that's hard to believe, but I'm gonna say it again.
Yeah.
He wants you. Your God has to be bigger than your excuses. Your belief in what he has already placed within you, your destiny, your future, right, has to be bigger than any excuse that you can come up with. The freedom of others is dependent on your obedience.
Yes.
Michelle, you have anything you want to say for so we can wrap up?
No, I just thank you. I love this text because I think it challenges us to think beyond what we know. I love when we talk about the stories that are familiar. Like Moses' story, lots of people know it, right? We can talk about it because we saw Prince of Egypt, so we feel like we know, everything. But to really dig in and realize that it was ultimately about him sacrificing parts of himself, even so that he could free his people. I mean, I think that that it's timely in this season, and it challenges me to be a better person and to really dig into the things that I don't like to talk about or those places where I feel inadequate. So just thank you for this.
No, yeah. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna go home and like, Lord, what I need to fix? Like I usually do when we finish Bible studies. I was like, Lord, what I need to get better at this? What help me fix it, God? And like you said, because when people watch us, I don't want them to think that we are perfect people, right? We are flawed. We are flawed people, right?
Yes.
Trying to have the flawless will of God, right? Yeah. And so we're in this together. I'm learning to sacrifice more, like you said, even those smaller things. And collectively, I hope, as a body of Christ, that we can get beyond ourselves and see the bigger picture in this current pandemic. And like you said, Michelle, sacrifice the small things.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So I enjoyed this tonight. Please, 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 Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard, we have our weekly Friday prayer call. The number is posted in Faith First Friday. If you're not a part of the group, come on over and join us. But Michelle and I often post the number on our pages as well. We love you guys. We're always thinking of you. We're always praying for you. And as always, thank y'all for taking the time to even to hear us and sit with us and have these conversations. We love you guys and we're so grateful just for your support, honestly. Because it was a sacrifice on a lot of days, Michelle. And I was like, I'm tired, Lord. It was like, yeah.
I know you are. Yes, girl. Yes.
But nevertheless, like God has been like so awesome in this, Michelle, and He has really, like I said, blessed me. So I'm grateful for all that you give to Faith First. So thank you.
Couldn't do it without you. So thank you.
Well, I hope y'all have a great night, and we'll talk again on Friday for our prayer call. See you guys later.